Hello and welcome to Open School of Business. My name is Anaro Murzak. I'm your host. And today we have Jeff Barnes. He is a professor at the California Baptist University, and he's a really famous speaker in leadership and success coaching. Jeff wrote several books about Walt Disney and the most magical place in the world, and how he learned a very interesting, deep lessons about leadership, success, and happiness. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jeff to the show. Hi, Jeff. How are you doing today?
Hi, Anar, and like to say hello to your listeners. And I am doing absolutely wonderful.
Great. So I would like to dive into the core of the things that you are doing right now. I know you have tremendous experience in education field, and you've completed your PhD in New Testament studies.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the notable things that have really stood out for me, that you've been instrumental in envisioning and building new campuses for different universities. Maybe you could talk a little bit about those achievements and how you've decided, first of all, to study that field and how it helped you along the way. And what led you to writing those books and being interested in Disney World?
So I've been in the field of higher education for more than 2 decades, and like you said, I have a PhD in New Testament studies, but my real fascination is in storytelling. And as human beings, we are wired for story. And with Walt Disney, Walt wasn't born successful. I had a very difficult childhood, and when it came to building Disneyland, he built it for the purpose of telling stories, stories that I believe are challenging us to then go out and live our own great story. And regardless of what class I'm teaching, whether it's in the field of New Testament, whether it's US history, whether it's American government, or even my course on the history of Disneyland, I want to be challenging students to do just that, to live their own great story. And so, the purpose of my, keynotes, the purpose of writing books is to connect with students, to connect with readers, and to challenge each of us, to dig deeper, to connect at that story level, and to make sure that our narratives are such that we're doing what Walt did, and that is live a great story and make sure that we're connected to each other so that our stories matter and that our stories count.
That is really great because, first of all, for podcasting, I always love speakers who know storytelling and then they can use it to really connect with the audience, to connect and communicate their own background, and really tell us the why of the things that they're doing. And I
Yeah.
think that the why matters so much, so that it gives you the very clear path to success. But what is challenging is when you're at the beginning of your story. And for entrepreneurs, that's always often the case because they start new things very often, and they don't know what their story is going to be like.
Hmm.
So for someone as famous and as successful as Walt Disney, now is so obvious what was the story, and it's easy for us to say, "Oh, that was just great," and he was a really hardworking man. He never gave up. But what do you advise for people who are in the beginning of their story and their journey? How should they approach this and try to become successful, and what can help? Because obviously you have just so many years of experience in teaching people, in getting your books out there, achieving many academic levels like you did. So I think your advice would be uh, incredibly insightful.
Well, again, we all love story. It's why we read books. It's why we go to the movies. I think it's story that brings us back to the Disney parks over and over and over again. We're wired for story. The challenge, Anar, is that every great story requires conflict. And for most of us, while we love story, when it comes to conflict, we tend to back away. We tend to shy away. And it was Walt who once said, all of our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Well, Walt was a unique individual because he had the courage to pursue each and every one of his dreams. He wasn't afraid of his difficult childhood. He wasn't afraid when he went bankrupt with his first studio in Kansas City at age 21 in 1923. Rather than giving up, he went all in on his dream by boarding a train bound for California with $40, a single suitcase, and a one-way ticket. And that's when he joined forces with his older brother Roy in Los Angeles. And together they founded the Disney Brothers Studio, that today is the largest entertainment company anywhere in the world. He wasn't afraid when he lost his first successful cartoon character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. He turned that failure into Mickey Mouse. He wasn't afraid when no one believed in the first full-length animated feature film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He wasn't afraid when he wanted to turn animation into an amusement park, a place called Disneyland. And he wasn't afraid when he wanted to turn Disneyland into his biggest dream ever, Walt Disney World. And so for all of us today, whether you're a business owner, a manager, a leader, an entrepreneur, you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe in your ideas. You've got to believe in your dreams. You've got to be willing to live that great story and embrace conflict, embrace difficulty, knowing that along the way, you're going to have to slay a dragon or two. And that's okay, because the bigger your dragon are, the bigger your dragon, the better your story.
So, in terms of the dragon, I love to comparing it to the problem to be solved. But obviously, in the example of Walt Disney, there were some dragons that were literally just against his idea and his creative idea. And I know that sometimes people in the business as well, they have this incredible, interesting, innovative ideas. But the whole entrepreneurial model says you have to speak to your customers, and if they don't like the idea, most likely you're not going to make money on it because they don't want it. That's why you do all this customer service, customer interviews, making sure that the customer base is ready, there is a fit between the product and the people that are going to be using it. So how would you respond to that in terms of how for a person to identify the dragon from the just the no demand issue for any kind of idea? Should
Well, I
they
think
try
for
to tweak it, or is there still a way of doing it the way you envision it to do?
well, I think for true visionaries like Walt, or even say a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk,
Right.
um, you know, you have to go with your gut, and go all the way back, say, to Henry Ford. If he had asked people what they wanted, they would have told him a faster horse. And
Yeah.
when Walt built Disneyland, he didn't want to create another amusement park. We had amusement parks in 1955. He wanted to create a story park. He wanted to create a theme park. And there wasn't a customer in 1955 who could answer a survey that was going to give Walt the answer he was looking for, because nothing like it existed anywhere in the world. And so, for the true visionary entrepreneur, you are really going to have to go out on that limb, go with your gut, and trust that you're going to carve a brand new path. And understand, Walt's own wife and own brother didn't believe in what he was doing. And that's how you create something brand new in a space that's never existed before. And, that's what I talk about in the Wisdom of Walt leadership lessons from the happiest place on earth, that willingness to trust yourself, believe in your idea, your crazy thought, believe in your dreams, because that's how you change, maybe not the world, but at least your own world. And I know in my space, higher education, I teach the world's only accredited college course on the history of Disneyland, and nothing like it existed. And people thought I was nuts. People thought I was crazy. But I'm like, look, our students know Disney. They love going to the park. What if we could use it not as an escape, but as an example? What if Disney became not just the place where dreams come true? What if we could use it as the place to show them how to make their own goals and their own dreams come true? And again, it's sort of that example of how to overcome obstacles and forge their own future. And once I was able to establish that in an academic curriculum syllabus kind of way, people are like, there's some legitimacy here, go for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is just such an amazing idea that it also caught my eye. Your books on your LinkedIn page, it really caught my eye. And I think having this course, even being available somewhere where people can uh, learn, like platforms like Udemy or Coursera, even would be more wonderful, because teenagers and kids can learn it even earlier, not necessarily going into the university, especially since
Right.
it's only in one university that you have it available. It's just amazing that you just explained the whole idea about trusting your gut. And I think entrepreneurs there, it's very common where the families are very afraid and risk averse versus to what they're doing. But I always say to people I know who are in entrepreneurial journey, and some of my students for entrepreneurship, you have to ask for advice, people who've done similar work or are doing similar work, because people who are not in that industry, they will not get it at all.
Correct.
And sometimes even people who've been in the industry for too long, they wouldn't get it either, because they're just so happy with the way things are and they
Yep.
don't want disruptors. So, and I think Disney is actually doing a great job as a company right now as well. Their Disney Plus streaming service is really skyrocketing.
Yes.
And again, it's all about the branding and the storytelling, because uh, makes decisions in terms of what streaming to choose is the kids, obviously, because that's what parents get their streaming service for.
Right. Well, and
And yeah.
Anmar, when Walt was building Disneyland, he didn't hire anyone who had experience with amusement parks, because he knew he wasn't building an amusement park. He was doing something completely different. And when he was hiring the first cast members, he only looked for people who were happy, because he was building the happiest place on earth. He wasn't looking for folks who had experience in an industry that already existed. He was like, look, I can train the people to do what I know needs to be done, but I can't train happiness. I am looking for a cultural fit. And so if you're happy, then look, I've got a place for you. I can train you to do everything else, but I can't teach you how to be happy.
Oh, wow, awesome. Do you know by any chance what's the measure he used to identify whether the person was happy or not?
Well,
Like interview or some kind of questions?
well, he hired a gentleman out of the aircraft industry by the name of Van Arsdale France, who went on to have a lengthy career and became a Disney legend. And he just said, "Look, I don't want sloppy service that I've had everywhere else around the country, and hire people who are positive, hire people who are happy, hire people who are going to take care of my guests. And, Van Arsdale France just had a really, really good way of finding folks that, were exactly that. And Walt was really, really happy, not just with the team that he created, but really the family that was formed.
Yes, I want to mention another company that does that, Trader Joe's, for example.
Yeah, they
They
do.
have the whole culture of their Hawaiian shirts, and uh, the associates, they're trained to help the customer first and do the all the other chores and the tasks that they have around the supermarket later.
Yeah,
So when a person is requesting, they're looking for some item, the associate will help you right away. And I want to mention that because not everyone goes to Walt Disney parks every day, kind of thing, but Trader Joe's is like a complete everyday
sure.
place. And I think they're managing pretty well during the pandemic as well. I haven't been to the Disney parks yet, but I've seen some of my friends going. And I don't know if there are any, you know, do you think the culture changed after certain period of time? Like, what is your measure of Disney parks as of now, or the latest you think?
Well, I mean, Walt said as long as there's imagination left in the world, Disneyland will never be finished. And it has always been growing, it's always been changing, it's always been evolving. Walt passed away from lung cancer in December 1966. He was diagnosed in November of that year, was given 6 months to 2 years to live, and unfortunately, he passed away after only 5 weeks. And that happened 6 months before they ever broke ground for what became Walt Disney World in Florida. And so, the change was almost immediate. Florida was supposed to be all about Epcot, not another theme park, but what was supposed to be the city of the future, the city of the 21st century. And as a result, over time, a lot at Disney has changed. Now, I get asked all the time, what would Walt think of how Disney's being run today? I get people who are really upset. Walt would roll over in his grave because of this or because of that. For me, I think Walt would just be thrilled that it is still going. I think he would be thrilled that the parks are international. Today, the sun doesn't set on a Disney park anywhere in the world. And I think he'd be especially thrilled given that at one time, his own wife and his own brother were against the idea. And most believed, again, that the first park, Disneyland here in Anaheim, California, was going to be shuttered, bankrupt, forgotten in 6 months or less. Now, having said that, would he be 100% thrilled with everything that they're doing? No, of course not. Walt had a certain way that he wanted things done. And over time, it's been more than 50 years since he passed. Over time, Disney has gotten away from that. There's Disney the man, and then Disney the brand, and Disney the company. And Disney the company is a publicly traded stock corporation, and they answer as much to the stockholders as they do the guests. Now, having said that, on almost any given day, 70% of the guests at Walt Disney World, soon to be Disneyland again, because Disneyland's finally reopening on April 30th, on any given day, 70% of the guests are returning guests, which I think is a phenomenal retention rate. And if you ask those guests, why are you back? It's not because of a show, it's not because of a parade, it's not because of an attraction. Most guests return because of the service they receive from a cast member. And, that's a testament to the training. That's a testament to the happy employees that Disney employs. And, again, it goes back to Walt's vision, not just of a place where parents and children can have fun together, but for his mandate of make sure you hire and train happy people.
Yes, I think Disney World is definitely associates with happiness a lot,
Correct.
and people do crave that feeling, and they want to experience that again and again.
Yeah.
And parents usually they're kind of looking for an excuse to go again if there
Yeah.
aren't any more kids in the family or the friends' families and things like that.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
it's hard to scale that up because Walt Disney World in Florida is the nation's largest single site employer. And to do that at the scale of approximately 77,000 cast members, that's a monumental job. More often than not, Disney does that and does it well. But can they maintain that at the level that Walt was able to maintain it when it was a smaller family here in Anaheim? Not at 100%, but they do it better than any other company in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love talking about systems and the leadership and how big corporations could scale things like that. But also, I'm interested in general your own journey through these projects. First of all, what interested you in Walt Disney and how you went about creating these books, and what do you think are the most original things about it, comparing to other books out there about Disney?
So, first of all, my very first trip to Disneyland happened in August of 1988, and I actually hated it. I tried to get in line for what was then the newest, latest, greatest attraction, Star Tours, and it took more than 3 hours to experience that first ride. And by the time we got out of there, the park was too hot, the park was too crowded. And by the end of that day, if you had told me I was going to end up doing what I'm doing now, some 3 decades later, I would have told you you're absolutely nuts. But I stayed in California long enough to go back 3 years later. And by that point, I was surrounded by enough people who were crazy enough about Disneyland that I sort of got curious. And Walt talked about the 4 C's of success. And for him, those C's of success are curiosity, consistency, um, courage, and confidence. And so I got curious. Well, I hated it. Everybody else loves it. What did I miss? And in that curiosity, I started doing a little bit of research. And that's when I discovered again, Walt wasn't born successful. He actually had more failures than successes. And I'm sort of passionate about, success. What does it take for someone to go from where they are to where they want to be? And as a result, when I returned back to the park in 1991, I saw it from a completely different lens. And I realized that even at age 53, Walt Disney, despite Mickey Mouse, despite Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, despite having more Academy Awards than anyone else in Hollywood history, even Walt Disney couldn't speak the words Magic Kingdom and it magically appear out of an orange grove in Anaheim, California. He had to overcome every adversity and every obstacle imaginable. And so I just fell in love with the story of his little storybook park. And over time, I just started reading and researching everything I could get my hands on about Walt Disney and Disneyland. And I started sort of dreaming of writing a book about it one day. And that eventually morphed into wanting to teach a college course on it. And the course was really about wanting to challenge students. Look, you've got an idea, you've got a dream, you've got a crazy thought. If you're ever going to see that come true, like Walt, you're going to have to face obstacles, you're going to have to overcome some sort of adversity. And when I finally had the opportunity to teach that course, my dream, for the first time, when I gave that first lecture, the very next day, Anar, I was actually diagnosed with a brain tumor. And they wanted to
Wow.
operate immediately. and it was going to take me out for the next 6 to 8 weeks, which was going to result in canceling the class, and it was going to wipe it from the university calendar, wipe it from the semester schedule, and that was going to be it. My dream was going to die right there. And I remembered, well, the whole point of the class is to teach students, give them the example that if you want to see your dream come true, you've got to overcome those obstacles. You've got to face those adversities. And if that's the point of the class, I can't just walk away. Like, I've got to be the example that I'm trying to teach. And so I said no to the neurosurgeon at Cedar Sinai in downtown Los Angeles, put the surgery off for 2.5 months so I could teach my class on the history of Disneyland. That's the dragon I personally had to slay. And uh, put the surgery off the first week of May until the 24th of July, taught the course. The students absolutely loved it. The surgery was successful later that summer. And when I went back to work for the fall semester, realized that the book I had been reading and researching for the past 2 decades, it was time to finally write it. And the Wisdom of Walt came out the next year, and it was so successful that folks on the East Coast were like, well, we love the book about Walt and Disneyland, but what about Walt Disney World? And so we came out with Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, which tells the story of Walt's passing and the leaders and entrepreneurs who picked up his dream for Walt Disney World in Florida, 6 months after he died. And then that book came out in 2017.
Oh wow. It's it's a really strong story. And now I'm suggesting you need to write another book. The third book, the making of the first two books. And
Well,
I would say your dragon, first of all, is big and is scary. How
absolutely.
did you not, you know, how you made the decision to put off the surgery? What if something happened to you during those 2.5 months? Did
Well,
you
I
have to negotiate
decided,
with your?
I thought about Walt in Kansas City when he made the decision to board that train and go all in $40 single suitcase one-way ticket. And when the university finally said that I could teach this class, it was an all in decision for me. Boarded the train, $40 single suitcase one-way ticket. And when the neurosurgeon said that I had a brain tumor, it was life threatening, and that I had to have surgery, I was already on that train. I was already all in, $40 single suitcase one-way ticket. And I looked I looked him in the eye and I said, sorry, doc, but you're not operating on me anytime soon. And the course meant that much to me. Not because I wanted to take kids to an amusement park, ride roller coasters, and give them an easy A. It's because, again, I don't see the park as an escape. I see it as an example. And I don't see Disney as the place where dreams come true. I genuinely have this belief that Walt and his Magic Kingdom is the example that entrepreneurs need to see their own dreams come true. And I couldn't just give one lecture and walk away.
Right, right. I get it, but I always think like, couldn't you wait another semester and then get back to it once you're done your surgery?
It
Like,
was a
what was the urgency? It's like
it
really,
was just this conviction. Um,
mm,
it was just I had to do it.
yeah. It's definitely admirable, but I can imagine, the feeling of your family and friends and being afraid, but it's like,
Yeah, they
it's
weren't.
a
There were
course
a lot of people in
and
my
it's a
life who
brain
weren't.
tumor.
There were a lot of people in my life who weren't too terribly happy with my decision. Um, but it made for a powerful story, and makes for a better book and a better keynote.
That's a big sacrifice, but I am genuinely really happy that we're having this conversation, that the brain tumor is in the past, and you're all recovered, and you have this amazing course. at your university with two great books. It's just really inspiring to see when people, go for the things that they believe in, and that curiosity, consistency, courage, and confidence, this is like a really good formula for someone to remember and practice every day.
Right. Well,
um
I think, and I think there's something else. Whatever your idea is, whatever your dream might be, whatever you're willing to start up as an entrepreneur, there's got to be that level of passion. And I'm not saying, risk your life or sacrifice your life or, put off some sort of life-threatening surgery. Um, but you've got to be passionate about it. And the people around you have got to know that you're willing to take some sort of risk, right? That you're so passionate, that you believe in it so much that you're willing to put something on the line, that you have some skin in the game. And, that's where I was 6, 7 years ago. I'm all in on this thing and nothing's going to stop me.
yeah, it's amazing. And as a sort of a summary of the book, what other advice or formulas the listeners and who would, turn into readers would find, like if if you may, it's like a preview for the book.
So when I sat down to write the Wisdom of Walt, my mindset was sort of twofold. One, there are a lot of great history of Disneyland books out there, which is how I was able to create the class. And I didn't want to write another history of Disneyland book because, again, they're already out there. I didn't think that the world needed another one. There are also a lot of other great Disney business books out there, and I'm not necessarily a business person, and I didn't think I needed to create anything in that space either. What I wanted to do was to write in such a way that it connected to the reader and challenged you in your own space and connected with you in your own story. And so as a result, because Walt built the park for the purpose of telling stories, I shared a lot of my own stories in the hope that it connected with you and your own story. And that was a bit of a risk because there really isn't anything out there that does that. And I hear from readers almost every week. And while that was the biggest risk that I took, it's also been the biggest reward. Readers love the fact that I share a lot from my own personal life and share a lot of personal stories. And so I hear from readers again almost every week because they feel vulnerable enough to share what's going on in their life, the risk that they're taking, the challenges that they're facing, and the way that they're trying to move their story forward. And that's been, unbelievably rewarding. To date, we've sold about 40,000 books. And, to see that risk pay off in such tremendous ways has just been unbelievable. And then secondly, I felt overwhelmed in writing the book because I didn't really know how to do it. But I just sat down with the goal of writing 333 words a day. Now, there were some days when I wrote more than that, but there was never a day when I wrote less than that. And, the way to keep from being overwhelmed was to just tell myself, I don't have to write the entire book today. I just have to write 333 words so that I get to the next day. And I started on November 22nd of 2014, and I had the book finished on April 15th of 2015. And so it, got finished a lot faster than I ever envisioned or imagined that it could.
Right. And I love the fact that you are sharing all the techniques that a lot of successful people use, and the coaches, they always say, break things down into smaller steps where there are manageable chunks, and
Yep.
the, and you can go through it. And the vulnerability is just such an important topic, where being able to share stories that are sensitive and those that really matter. And I think that's the power of storytelling. You tell something that is really deep, that really deeply concerns you.
Yep.
And for our audience, for example, today, you shared your story about the brain tumor, and how you fought that dragon, and you didn't let it slow down the progress that you were making. um, were any other interesting stories you'd like to share from earlier in your career that were very impactful to how it turned out in your life today?
Well, I have I've been in higher education for 20 years, and I've been very fortunate. I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD. But I actually ended up in college without having ever actually applied or taking an SAT or an ACT. I just showed up with $20 on the day that school started. And I like to refer to myself, even though I'm the Dean of Student Success at California Baptist University, I like to refer to myself as, quote unquote, the Dean of Not Supposed to Be Here. And it's just one of those, confidence stories where, you end up in the right place at the right time with literally nothing to lose. And, I just sort of, faked my way through it when I had to. And, here I am 40 years later with a career in higher education.
Wow, that's really amazing and inspiring. Because I think a lot of, especially young people these days, they always seek for permission
Right.
to do something. You can't just start doing something. You need to apply for it as a
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
And you have to be qualified for it. There's just so many different steps that it gets so overwhelming. And these days, people, I don't think there is anyone who would believe in showing up in someone's office and asking for a job, or asking for an interview, or doing
Right.
anything like that. People do always look or seek for permission. And I always tell stories from more of a back in the day approach, where we didn't have emails. And well, there were phones, but sometimes people wouldn't pick them up. So your best way of getting something done would be get out there and just start going door to door and things like that. So this is just such an amazing example again of how you can go to college,
Yeah.
literally just go there, and you would get the results you need
Yep. Well,
despite
and I
the
went,
obstacles. And you have to tell us more details, I'm sure, because there's a lot of people these days also
well,
trying to get education you
I
know
tell the entire story in the Wisdom of Walt.
Exactly. So good. There is a great opportunity for our listeners to pick up the book. And I will also ask Jeff if he would like to do um, a lottery where people who engage with the podcast can win a copy of your book. Um, that I think that's always exciting for people who listen, and if they're really interested, they can participate in withdrawal.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so that would be a lucky chance to find out all the stories that Jeff worked so hard on so many years. Um, and just, I'm really overwhelmed by the amount of commitment and passion you have for educating people, for sharing a powerful story of an amazing leader as Walt Disney. And for me, Walt Disney was always like an American brand. It was very similar to the American dream. And also, why you want to live in the States? Well, there are a lot of Disney World parks where you can go anytime and feel like in the middle of magic, right?
Mm,
So that's another point of where, the branding is so important.
right.
The whole notion is very American, and whoever are immigrants who also came here looking for that kind of free spirit minded culture, I think is just an amazing example of abundance, amazing example of hard work, turning out to be dreams come true at the end, and obviously believing in yourself and never stopping believing in yourself.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, I would like to give big thank you for your time today, and for sharing so many interesting facts about Disney, and sharing your story, and also showing an example of how to become a highly educated PhD person and a professor at a university, with pure confidence in the beginning, and then, of course, lots of hard work. I'm amazed and I'm very humbled that you came to give an interview today. Thank you so much. And I'd like to see your course being offered everywhere now.
Well, well, thank you, Anar. And we actually are working on getting the course developed in multiple modalities so that it's available to as many people as possible.